Hi foodies. All right, so today we're going to be doing something, it sounds really simple. It's called tomato pie, and it's a southern treat. Now you might say, ooh, tomato pie, that sounds disgusting, but wait till you try it. It's amazing, and it really takes advantage of our tomatoes, which are in season right now. So I've got a pre-made pie shell. I've already pre-baked it off some. I didn't bake it all the way, so it baked at 350 for about 10 to 15 minutes just to get a little brown on there. Now next I've got to prep my tomatoes. So you want to use some nice ripe firm tomatoes. I've got about 8 of them here. About 6 to 8 are going to be fine. And basically what we're going to do is just kind of slice these tomatoes, and I'm going to discard the tops here. And then we're going to salt them. So what we want is to salt them and let the moisture drain out. And I'll even try to express some of the seeds from the inside of these tomatoes, just so it's not so soggy. And I've got my colander in the sink there. So I may look like I'm throwing them down the sink, but I'm really just throwing them in the colander there. So these are garden tomatoes, as you can see. They're not perfect, but the flavor is amazing. This is the time when you want to use your tomatoes because they really have that really nice, bright flavor to them. And you really don't want to refrigerate your tomatoes either. You want them to be at room temperature. They tend to get mealy if you refrigerate them. On this one, I think I'm going to, there we go, take those, throw them off to the side. It had a little blemish inside. Now you could use Roma tomatoes if you wanted to. That would be fine as well. You're still going to do the same process. Roma tomatoes are a little bit meatier, so you won't have to drain them quite as long as this. All right, just get a few more in here. You want to look for a tomato that's nice and firm, has that bright color to it, and has a wonderful aroma. Firm, no blemishes to it. But because these are fresh from the garden tomatoes, you can see they're not perfect, but they still eat. Now the pie eats really well, even if it's hot or cold. So this is really nice to have and fix it ahead of time, and then you can just warm it up later if you like, or just serve it for the side dish. It's even good for breakfast. And I'm going to show you some little tricks to dress it up. All right, so I've got my tomatoes in here, and I'm going to take some coarse kosher salt, and I'm going to salt these really good. And I am going to flip these around a little bit because I want them to be evenly coated. Now I know that looks like a lot of salt, but that moisture is really going to help that salt drain off. And that salt is really important to help remove the moisture in those tomatoes. And you really want to do this if you've got a really watery vegetable, like if you're going to do a cucumber salad. It's important to salt them after you slice them and let that salt pull the moisture out of your cucumbers before you use them in cucumber salads, because otherwise it's going to make it very soggy. All right, so we're going to let that sit and drain for a little bit while we make our topping for our pie. got that seasoned very well. Okay, so next I'm going to chop an onion. And I'm going to layer the tomato with some chopped onion and some fresh basil. Now, I like having fresh basil in my garden because I use it a lot when I'm cooking. So it's really nice to have that really fresh basil. It's hardy, it grows well outside on the patio. You can also grow it inside. Now, if you don't like onion, you can omit the onion if you'd like. That's fine. If you want to add some sliced zucchini, you could do that as well. I would slice it up and then throw it in with your tomatoes and let them drain as well. All right, so we've got our onion chops. Let me chop my basil as well. And you can see how pretty this basil is. It's really fragrant, really bright colored leaves here. And I'm going to just pick them off this stem here. Of course, basil and tomatoes go together. You know, like a caprese salad with the fresh tomatoes and the basil and mozzarella. Nothing beats that. All right, so I'm just going to kind of roll my basil up here. I also like cooking and using up leftovers. So this is a good way if you have like tomatoes that are going to be going bad soon. This is a good use for them. Onion as well. I had a partial onion in the refrigerator, so that was a good way to use up those leftovers. All right, so our topping for our tomato pie, it's really easy. It's just extremely simple, but it adds a lot of flavor to it. So we're going to be using some real mayonnaise. It says real mayonnaise right there. Right there. Hellmann's works just as well. I don't know where I got that, but it tastes good. And then I'm using a mixture of cheese. So I have some Swiss cheese here that I'm going to grate. And because I hate having a lot of leftover and open products, I have this Mexican 4 cheese. You could do cheddar if you want. You can omit it and add more of the Swiss. It's really up to you, but because that's open, I didn't want to open another package of cheese and have it wasting in the fridge. All right, so we're going to, let me slice this real quick. Makes it easier to grate and grate our cheese here. I want about a cup of Swiss, and then I'm going to use about a cup of the Mexican cheese, and probably about 3/4 cup of the mayonnaise. And then of course we're going to season it with some salt and pepper. Now you can do this, like I said, all with cheddar, all with mozzarella, or you can make it a blend. It really is up to you. I like to give you recipes that you can kind of really just make it your own, you know? Just cook it the way you like it. If you omit something, it's not going to hurt the recipe, or you can add something. That's the way cooking should be. It should be fun. It should be who you are. Almost there, maybe a little bit more. And I like using the block cheese because it's got more moisture to it. If you get the cheese that's already grated, it doesn't have as much moisture, so it doesn't melt as nicely as a block cheese will. Now this recipe is going to make one nice size pie, and the pie crust I got was a deep dish pie shell. All right, that was about a cup, maybe a little bit more. I'll throw some of my other cheese in here. Now time for the mayonnaise. And this is where I'm gonna eyeball it. I say about 3/4 cup. I really want like a nice thick consistency, something I can still spread though. So I'll put this in here and then give it a toss. And you can see how that's coming together. I might add a little bit more mayonnaise in there. I want to be able to spread it over the pie, but I don't want more mayonnaise than cheese, because the cheese is going to be the highlight in that, of course. Now, if you want a little spice in this, this would be a good time to add some hot sauce to it. I'm going to put a little salt in it. And some fresh cracked black pepper. I like using my pepper mill instead of the box of pepper, you know, that little tin of pepper, just because this is fresh. The other stuff, you know, it's probably been sitting in that jar or in the tin for a while, so it's not as flavorful. All right, so there is my mixture right there. You can see it's got a nice consistency to it. It's kind of thick, but we're still going to be able to spread it on the pie. All right, time to assemble the pie now. So one more toss of my tomatoes. I want to work out as much liquid as possible. Now, if you have a lot of extra tomatoes and you really don't know what to do with them and you're tired of tomato pie, you can always slice your tomatoes and put them on a baking sheet on top of some parchment paper and put some olive oil, salt and pepper, and then slow roast them until they're caramelized. And that's a nice way of using up those tomatoes. All right, so I have my pie shell right here, and I'm going to layer tomatoes. And put a little bit of onion. And some fresh basil. And then some more tomatoes. This would make a really nice brunch dish, by the way, or as a side dish. Tonight I'm going to be serving this alongside some grilled pork chops. Some grilled zucchini would be nice for that as well, or some oven roasted potatoes. All right, so I've got a little bit more onion. I think I'm just going to put some on top of that. Now the oven's preheated to 350 degrees. There. And now it's time to put our topping on. And this is going to melt, form a nice little crust on top of it. you know, until I tried this, if someone had said tomato pie, I probably would have turned my nose up as well. And then last year, I had a whole bunch of tomatoes to cook or do something with, courtesy of my mom and dad, of course. And came across this recipe and I thought, well, let's give it a try and see how it comes out. And it soon became a favorite in the household. So, all right, so there's our tomato pie. We've got our tomatoes that have been sliced and we've salted them with some kosher salt and let them drain for about 10 minutes. And we've got about a cup of Swiss cheese and a cup of shredded cheddar. It's a Mexican blend, and some mayonnaise, salt, and pepper. And we put that over the top. All right, so this is going on my baking sheet. And in my 350-degree oven. Last 2 minutes, I'm going to sprinkle some Parmesan cheese on top because cheese is always good on food, right? And we're going to bake it about 350 degrees for about 30 minutes. So stay tuned and see what it looks like.
One.
All right, so it's been 30 minutes, so let's take a look at our tomato pie. Oh yeah, that looks so good. So we have a nice light brown crust to that, and you can see the tomatoes just kind of peeking through. So this is our tomato pie. We baked it at 350 for about 30 minutes, and it's got fresh tomatoes, some onions, some basil, and then the topping is mayonnaise, Swiss cheese. I threw in some cheddar and some salt and pepper, and you can throw in a little spice with some hot sauce if you want. So hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for eating with me today. Ciao.